NFL free agent signings always come quick, fast, and in a hurry. No difference here in 2021. That's why we're breaking down some of the latest free agency signings and the fantasy football impact with Sports Illustrated's Michael Fabiano. Fabs, over the last couple of days, we've already seen a bunch of players sign. I think it's important now to just do a quick refresher. Let's start off with quarterback Andy Dalton. He goes from the Cowboys, signs a 1 year, $10 million, $10 million contract with the Chicago Bears.
If you're a Bears fan, Bill, are you just done? Like at this point, like really, you're going to Andy Dalton now. So Dalton's going to be in a competition with Nick Foles, and Dalton's not going to have a whole lot of standalone value outside of two QB leagues. I think ultimately he'll end up being the starter for the Bears. But what does this mean for Allen Robinson or Darnell Mooney or Cole Kmet? That's what we're concerned about. And Allen Robinson has basically been quarterback proof, so I think it's fine. And Dalton, he gets a bad rap, but he was a pretty decent quarterback in Cincinnati. AJ Green was a star during their time together in the Queen City. So I don't hate the move, but if I'm a Bears fan, I can't be that thrilled, especially when there was talk that they were trying to acquire Russell Wilson. So from Wilson to Dalton, well, that's just, you can make a decision on how that move ended up going.
All right, let's move over to running back. I'm a little disappointed in one of these because I have DeAndre Swift in my dynasty league now that Jamaal Williams signed in Detroit. And then also, if you have James Robinson in your dynasty league, they brought in Carlos Hyde, but also the Dolphins, they signed Malcolm Brown.
Right. So for DeAndre Swift, I don't think this is a death blow by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's still going to end up being a pretty solid RB2. Last season, Adrian Peterson had a bigger touch share in the Lions backfield than Jamaal Williams had in the Green Bay Packers backfield. Is he a good runner? Absolutely. Will he potentially take away some touches, maybe some catches from DeAndre Swift? Yes, that's probably going to be the case. But also keep in mind that Aaron Jones was a top 5 running back 2 straight seasons with Jamaal Williams behind him on the depth chart. So for me, Swift is still an RB2. Williams is a nice handcuff. He could have some standalone value as a flex during the course of the season as well. Of course, a lot of that has to do with what the Lions do and if negative game script affects them and if Detroit ultimately keeps DeAndre Swift on the field during passing situations. You mentioned Carlos Hyde going to Jacksonville. I think this is great for James Robinson because I don't see Carlos Hyde as a threat. So Robinson's value still of a top 20 fantasy running back. And then in Miami, Malcolm Brown going to the Dolphins. I think this might be the first move that they make in terms of the running back position. So right now, Myles Gaskins is the 1 and Malcolm Brown is the 2. But the Dolphins could add one of the big running backs in the NFL draft. Maybe it's Travis Etienne. Maybe it's Najee Harris or Javonte Williams. Time will tell. So I don't know that they're done. But as it stands, Gaskin remains in that RB2 mix and Malcolm Brown would be a handcuff. And now in Los Angeles, the road is even more clear for our guy Cam Akers to come over and take on a much bigger role, much like he did at the end of his rookie campaign. Akers will certainly be one of the big breakout candidates in fantasy football next season.
Cam Akers is going to be a top 10 running back in 2021. Let's move over to wide receivers. And it's kind of interesting because we're still waiting on some of these big name free agents, Kenny Galladay, Juju Smith-Schuster, Will Fuller. But we have had maybe some wide receiver 2 or 3s for fantasy purposes sign on with new teams. Why don't you take us through a couple of them?
Well, Marvin Jones is the first one. I thought a Lions wide receiver would sign in Jacksonville. I just thought it was going to be Kenny Galladay, and it ended up being Marvin Jones. So he was the wide receiver 18 last year. That's not going to happen again in 2021 outside of injuries. DJ Chark's going to be the 1. Jones will be the 2, the field stretcher. He knows the offense. Remember, he played with Darrell Bevell during their time together with the Detroit Lions, so learning the offense is not going to be a problem. And then you'll have Laviska Shenault also mixed in, we assume, catching passes from Trevor Lawrence. So for me, Marvin Jones is probably more of a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 at best, going into Jacksonville with DJ Chark being the best fantasy option out of that receiver group. Emmanuel Sanders didn't take long to find a job, right? Released by the Saints. Now he lands with the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know that Sanders is going to have a lot of value there. In fact, he probably won't get picked in a lot of 10 or 12 team leagues. But I do feel like this could have a bit of a negative effect on Gabriel Davis, who we all love. You've got Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and then Davis in that order from a fantasy perspective. Sanders being in the mix could just muddy the waters in terms of the target share for Gabriel Davis. So he loses a bit of his sleeper luster. And now going to John Brown, who was released by the Bills. Basically, Sanders is now an older version of John Brown. John Brown goes to the Las Vegas Raiders, where we think he will replace Nelson Aguilar. Now, the Raiders are going to have Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, and of course, Brown in the mix at wide receiver. And they might not be done either in the free agent market or potentially in the draft, adding to this position. So while Brown right now is probably worth a late round flyer, if Las Vegas adds to their pass catchers throughout the course of this offseason, Brown might not even be draftable in some leagues.
We got plenty more free agents to track, and we're doing it all here from a fantasy football perspective with Mr. Michael Fabiano right on Sports Illustrated. Check it all out. Go to si.com/fantasy.